So please put your hands together for Jack and welcome him to the stage. Jack.
Thanks, Sam. Good afternoon, everybody. It's very nice to be here again today. My name is Jack Davison. I am EVP at 3Vision, and I am here to talk to you today about the very snappily titled session, How the Focus on Profit Impacts Content Strategies at Studio/Channel Groups with D2C Services. I could have just said, I'm going to talk to you about how the studios are selling their content or operating their services, which is probably the easy way to do it. It's actually almost a reboot of last year. We did talk in a very similar way on this subject last year about studios monetizing their content. But obviously this year, we're talking about it in very different contexts. We've had very different times for the studios, very different times for everybody. I think everyone will admit that 2023 was a pretty tough year. And 2024 is probably going to be another tough one as well. And the context of that with the studios is even more important because obviously a key theme to last year that's been kind of building is the different lens which is used to look at the studio businesses and to look at what they're doing with D2C and how they're monetizing content. The big theme, I mean, our company 3Vision has been around for 21 years now, and I always try not to use the word unprecedented because our industry has been changing continuously for the last 21 years, certainly when I've been at 3Vision. We've seen all sorts of change from technology, consumer behavior, business behavior, and the list is a very long one, social media, content itself. But the shift to D2C that kind of commenced arguably a bit earlier, around 2020, was a big deal. It came amidst a pandemic as well. And actually, since then, obviously, which we're going to talk about today, they've changed very much the way they're looking at this and what they're doing with their content, particularly last year. But just on the simplest of levels, if you look very quickly at kind of what they've been doing to D2C subscribers and their growth, they actually haven't done a bad job. We spend our life looking at trends and looking at what they've been doing. But in the last 3 years, they've grown a subscriber base whilst kind of on the rest of the world on a global basis has actually kind of been pretty much standing still or losing them. But the problem is, can they scale? And can they scale is the most sensible way for the studios to make money with the content that they make, to operate direct-to-consumer services and sell those services to consumers. That is the lens under which kind of the studio's examination has changed now, and there's a lot of pressure for them to monetize content in different ways, because kind of other key narrative and headline of the year, Netflix won the streaming war. Not really that simple, but that's what everyone liked to say last year. But in the face of being behind Netflix by a long way, what are they going to do with their content and how are they going to do it? And the investors, a fickle bunch, have been pretty clear about what they think about studios and content businesses. I haven't even got kind of some of the free TV businesses that the investors have even less of an opinion of on this chart. But really, it's a couple of the tech stocks and Netflix have managed over the last few years to please the investors, with Meta, with their family of apps doing incredibly last year, and so therefore kind of their numbers doing well. But the studios themselves are kind of consistently facing pressure and consistently following the theme of cutting costs, saving money, getting to profitability. Warner, to start with Warner Brothers Discovery, they've had a challenging year, they've lost subscribers in the States. I mean, we could talk about 2023 for ages. There's a confluence of factors that all come together to really hit the studios. There's macroeconomic crisis, there's a cost of living crisis, there's fiscal challenges, there's the strikes, which is the biggest kind of hold up in production that the US studio system has ever seen outside of COVID. And Warner themselves are very, very focused on getting to profitability. I think their kind of accountants should probably win an Oscar, the way they talk about their accounts and their numbers and profitability. Likewise, Disney Plus, very focused on getting control of their costs, very focused on reaching profitability, but kind of hugely challenged, particularly in India, which kind of if you follow it, kind of with their hot style business having a lot of challenges losing cricket rights largely, which led to those challenges. But like Warner, very focused on the profits, and Paramount the same. I mean, the three read the same. I think if you kind of believe if you listen to the financial community and investment community, they're pretty concerned about Paramount not getting control of their costs. But they are equally as focused on hitting profitability and equally talking about how good a job they're doing of getting there. However, to do that, they're all doing very many different things with their content, which we'll start to look at now. But finally, the last one, let's talk about a smaller one, Lionsgate, kind of mini studio in a way. They very much have turned around, and they've closed 6 key markets. You can see they closed there in 2023. The UK, actually, I think it's still just going. Maybe it's closed. And you can see kind of they've definitely retreated out of those markets, definitely improving the business's balance sheet, arguably to sell the business or parts of the business, and very much following that theme. So what's the race to? I mean, this is just, I'm not even listing them all here, but the clearest cut, with the clearest cut metrics being kind of Disney, Warner, and Paramount. Kind of, what are they fighting to? Fighting very hard to get profitable, but what are they going to do about subscribers, given that now subscribers is not their key #1 metric? These are the last 3 quarterly releases that have all happened in the last month or so. You can read them incidentally. If you want any of these slides, you can use the QR code at the end. But these are simply what they're saying. You can see talking about profitability, free cash flow, and so on. But now we start getting into some of the metrics about the content. What this shows is really in 2023, if you look at the studio TV premieres in about 11 of the key kind of global markets for TV shows, in terms of the new shows that have premiered in those markets in 2023, 59% of those shows went on studio direct-to-consumer markets. So there's no massive retreat going on. There is, we'll come into what they're doing, but there is a huge amount, 60% of content that the studios have is going on to these services, onto the studio direct-to-consumer services. And if you look at movies, this is just looking at the top 10 movies from 2022 at the box office, so it only covers, there's 3 or 4 different studios featuring there. You can see how the different approaches are clear, particularly Disney, who arguably are the most all-in of the studios in the process. But you can see, firstly, how big a role direct-to-consumer plays with the first pay movie window. But you can also see the different kind of occasional appearances of non-studio services who still represent key, highly valuable content deals for the studios. And some of these might be up and some of these might change. But what's more important is to start looking at the kind of the nuances of the windowing and how they're doing things. If you look over time at what's happening with content on studio direct-to-consumer services, I probably should be told off for putting up 2024 because it's way too early to do it. But what you can see is that there hasn't been a kind of a further growth in the number of premieres on studio SVOD service in 2023. And kind of if you do start looking at numbers, maybe a tiny tick down. But certainly, we haven't seen more growth in the number of premieres that are on the studio direct-to-consumer services. Now what I'm showing you is not so much what's on studio direct-to-consumer services, but I'm showing you the percentage of shows that the studios air on their own service. So this is where they have not taken the content to the market to sell it. This is the opportunity cost that they face. And again, I couldn't resist the temptation. I jumped to 2024. So really what we're looking at here is there's been a small rise from 56 to 63% of premieres in 11 global markets. So it's not as simple for me to stand up here and say they're rethinking their strategy, they're back in the market, they're selling content. Look, the percentage of the premieres have gone down. It is kind of slowing, and in some markets you can see there's a very different variety. But it's in other ways we need to start looking at kind of how that is working. If any of you in here are buyers or sellers of content, you will know last year that the studios were out on the market selling their content. Very much so, really pushing it. So it might not be reflected here in first window, kind of new season premieres of shows. And it doesn't fully get shown here when you look at it by studio, but you can see the variety. You can see kind of Disney have definitely kind of checked a bit, come down a bit. Warner haven't really kind of moved the needle at all. Paramount are the only one that really have, and that is largely because they launched Sky Showtime in a lot of markets. So they launched with a lot of new content, so that was going to happen. I would bet kind of what's in my wallet that next year, if I'm standing up showing you, that Paramount number will come down. If it doesn't come down, it will also be because of the nuances around what they're doing, which will come to kind of the rest of the theme of this session about partnerships. They're working very hard at what they can do with their content. Here is kind of in the last 2 or 3 months, some of the premieres that have happened from these studios who have direct-to-consumer services that have gone against vertical integration. So you can see kind of where they've either sold the first window to a third-party service or a second window to a third-party service. And you can see how there's a variety, and they're working out kind of how they might sequence things, how they might pipeline their different assets, whether it's a network show or whether it's more of a premium cable show. But if you look at this, you can even see things like House of the Dragon kind of pop up in Germany as a second window on Join, which is ProSieben's service in the market. That's pretty amazing, really. It's that House of the Dragon's already popped up there. You can see some of the network shows, some of the shows that are originals or digital originals in other markets popping up on free TV. A great variety. So, and they are working through kind of their strategies with that. And the key pivot, the significant pivot, which kind of everyone knows because the headline is Netflix buying content from the studios again, is the library content being sold. So we saw, in particular, the one that everyone paid attention to was HBO selling their shows, the library shows, to Netflix. But here, this is just Nielsen's top 10 of the year, actually. This is the year. It just shows that kind of you've got NBC show Suits, kind of which is on their own service in the States, plus on Netflix. You've got Paramount sharing shows with Netflix. You've got kind of Max and Disney sharing. I mean, that's just the top 10, but that sharing is a key feature. One of the issues that's still there is that free TV buyers, if they buy stuff from the studios, they want to have the rights to show it, and they want to have the rights to show it as a box set. There's a little kind of bit in this data. You can see kind of on the left is premieres of acquired shows, and only about 17% of shows in 2023 came with limited catch-up, came with basic catch-up. But if you look at, and it's actually only that section that's 28% of the second windows that were on free TV, if you look at that, about 25% of them came with basic catch-up. And that is the key sticking point. If you talk to people in sales and talk to buyers, kind of they need more rights. And if studios are going to be sharing their content, they're worried about that. From a Warner Brother point of view, they are doing precisely that with their movie pipeline at the moment in the States. So after a window of up to about 6 months on Max, they are selling kind of a co-exclusive window. So the show will go on to, in this case, either Netflix, Prime, or Hulu. That's another way they're doing it. Again, this is Paramount. Here, in even more hybrid future, there'll be talk about studio partnerships. Here, Paramount have a partnership with Sky. They've moved from selling their content to Sky, then to Netflix, then to Channel 4, to launching Paramount Plus and sharing their content with Sky. Plus, they actually share Paramount Plus with Sky, as it's in part of the tiers on the service. But a little detail here that's quite interesting. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, probably the biggest release of the year. And if you see, that actually aired on Sky first, not through the Paramount Plus service, and not at all on Paramount Plus at the moment. I believe it's just hit the schedules, and it's going to come out at the end of this month. So they gave Sky a 1-month head start on that. So that's an illustration of kind of the different ways they can work and the different ways they're partnering with people. And those are going to be more and more important to make sure they get to profitability, getting wholesale subs, getting partnerships in some way. Another example of this, before I kind of get close to wrapping up, is the type of deal they're renewing with, they are doing with someone like Mnet, who operates the major pay-TV platform in sub-Saharan Africa. You sort of wished in the headline, they've done a deal with Paramount Plus. All we're just really illustrating here is kind of everything changes, but everything stays the same. On the left here is the share of Paramount shows that went onto Mnet services in Africa last year. The red are all Mnet services. So kind of 92% of premieres went on Mnet already. So now they've done their deal with Paramount to have Paramount part of the services. It's not really going to change where the content goes. It might change it in the sense that more shows come on, but it's not going to change it that much. Finally, there's FAST. I had to mention FAST. It is relatively probably small part of the equation for the studio's balance sheets and their search for profitability at the moment. But what was an interesting characteristic about FAST last year, there's lots of oxygen being consumed about FAST, but one of the interesting characteristics is that more serious players moved in, more tier 1 players moved in. Okay, they might still be using their library content, but you can see kind of 22% of the channels that launched in the second half of last year were from US studios. Finally, what's going to happen this year? Rather than me say, I thought I'd tell you exactly what a bunch of respondents told us at the end of the year. Firstly, they all agree that they need a better set of rights for selling second windows, so they need to give box set rights. You can take the BBC over here, those of you who know it. Everything that goes on the BBC appears as a box set on iPlayer. They're not going to buy something if they can't get that right. Studios will also sell more content after they've used it for themselves, so in the second window, there's 81% there. Studios will sell more content to third parties versus premiering on their own D2C services. Little less, but still kind of 67% kind of saying that they will do that. And then finally, kind of the view that kind of studios will only sell non-core content. What's, I guess, relevant here is 50% of the people asked disagree with that entirely. So they feel that kind of some of the studio core content will start appearing on third-party services. That's it for me. You can get that presentation there on the QR code if you'd like it. Yeah, that's it.